Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Happy New Year to you all. And it was pretty much a happy New Year for Tottenham Hotspur, starting 2021 with a win. And it's such a weird situation that this is the first time they've won in 5 matches in the Premier League. Yet they find themselves currently, while doing this video, 3rd place in the Premier League, 4 points off the top. And that kind of is just sums up the crazy nature of the Premier League season this year. So many of the teams at the top have been dropping points, but also it's so tight in there that although Spurs are 4 points from the top, they're actually only 3 points above 10th place, albeit West Ham have played 1 game more. It's a mad season. A couple of wins and you're right up there. Couple of defeats and you can be in the bottom half of the table, really. I think Mourinho kind of alluded to that a few weeks back. He said that, no one should get really too carried away with stuff because things can change in an instant in this Premier League. Such a weird season. And, obviously the what-ifs among us, and, I'm often like that as well. You do wonder whether if Tottenham had actually not stuttered and stumbled in the last few weeks, just how, they could have been clear at the top of the table. But there's no point looking at football that way because there's what-ifs in every direction, isn't there? Obviously, would have normally had 2 games to talk about this week, but clearly the Fulham game was postponed, which the club were very unhappy with the way it was dealt with, and it was a very late decision in the end. It was only just under 3 hours before kick-off. It was difficult because as well Fulham were informed to purely have their dialogue with the Premier League, so they say, which then caused issues because Spurs were getting annoyed that they weren't getting any communication with Fulham. It was all a bit of a mess, but ultimately, while it was an utter pain for Spurs at the time, they prepared, they'd been at the training ground all ready to go to the stadium. Actually, with Fulham then reporting more cases subsequently and having their match called off today as well, you kind of feel like Spurs dodged a bit of a bullet there. Yes, of course, they're going to have to fit that match into some busy cluster of fixtures coming up, but in terms of steering clear of clearly was a club with some issues with COVID at the moment, I think it was a good thing. And kind of subsequently you had the weird knock-on effect, which we'll come into a little bit more, of the fact that Spurs were fresher, had a whole week, and that I think you saw that in their play against Leeds. They were much more back to the pressing game. So having those extra, it's not days off because they were still working, but not having a match in the middle, I do feel kind of benefited Spurs' play in countering what Leeds do best. But again, we'll come to all of that again. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to start with some of the off-pitch stuff that it didn't occur yesterday, but it started to come into the light yesterday. Obviously, that's the gathering over Christmas of Giovanni Lo Celso, Eric Lamela, Sergio Reguilon, West Ham's Manuel Lanzini, and a lot of other family members. I know this is going to split opinion. I know a fair old whack of people were very upset with what happened. And I know, because obviously I tweeted out, I was trying to get a statement from the club along with many other journalists yesterday. Spurs, came out, strongly condemned what had happened. Let me just explain it for anyone that hasn't seen it, in case you've managed to miss it. So, and obviously if you're abroad, you might not be aware of the UK restrictions. So, in Tier 4 areas, which is much of England and the UK now, on Christmas Day, in Tier 4, no longer were people allowed to mix with other households. They had to have their own Christmas within, pretty much, as any other day during these restrictions of not being able to meet other people indoors from other families. Unfortunately, a photo emerged, which is believed to have come from being on Christmas Day, showing a massive group photo, and I counted up the people in it. There were 18 people all gathered together. And like I say, among those in the photo were Lo Celso, Lamela, Reguilon, Lanzini, and various family members, lots. And I counted 18. Of course, I don't know whether the person taking the photo was a person or whether they had it, set up on a tripod or a shelf or whatever. And I saw some people afterwards saying, which is something, a common theme some people say when they see these things, people should be allowed to see their families at Christmas, blah, blah, blah. Where I'd say that really doesn't apply in this case at all is, you're not talking about 3, 4 people, a family gathering to spend their Christmas together, or slightly bending rules or anything like that. 18 people gathering. It's so wrong. Whatever you want to say about bubbles, players being in bubbles and everything, that kind of then got destroyed by the fact that they had so many other family members there. You had Lanzini from a different club mixing in as well. And, obviously you could also throw, yes, some of them may have already had COVID-19. Ultimately, 18 people gathered. It's just, again, I know there's going to be comments under this, like there were on Twitter when I put out this club statement yesterday. There's people that disagree. But it's just very simple that there were rules that were set out. The club, whether players like it or not, they're role models. And, and what was, I don't want to make it sound like, they were daft because they were caught. I think they were daft in the first place. But, one of the members of that party then stuck up the photo on Instagram. And, swiftly, when they realised that everyone was noticing that it was online, had to make their account private. It was very, very stupid, quite frankly, the whole thing. And I think what kind of gets to me slightly is, and I don't mean to sound preachy or ranty or anything, but, literally a few miles away, Tottenham, the closest hospital to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is the North Middlesex University Hospital. On New Year's Eve, that hospital was absolutely full. Absolutely full. Every single adult critical care bed was full. They had no room to accept any more serious, injuries or anything to the hospital because it was so full up dealing with COVID cases, And then just down the road, you've got everyone gathering and just flouting the rules. I think it's made all the more annoying for everyone that did kind of stick to the rules and everything. And, Lo Celso and Lamela have both come out and apologised since. I've certainly seen that. At the time of recording this, Sergio Reguilon hadn't. It was a strange one with Reguilon. Lo Celso wasn't included in the squad yesterday because he's injured. He would have missed it anyway. Lamela was completely out, even though he'd been in the last 2 games. I think there's a little bit more to come on Eric Lamela, which, I'm not at liberty to say right now, but just keep an eye on. We've got more stuff coming on that. That's all I'll say right now. Reguilon was on the bench, was a little bit surprised at, to be honest. And, Mourinho made a little point afterwards. He was asked about it as well, because if you didn't see, Sergio Reguilon was given, let's say, Mourinho felt quite sorry for him because Reguilon was going to spend Christmas Day on his own, I should stress as well, I know I don't want to downplay stuff because I know it's important for people to be with the ones they love at Christmas and everything like that. But with Reguilon, one day, Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, everything, he's back at, training with essentially his Spurs family now, isn't it? Everyone in that building. So it was one day on Christmas Day, and I'm trying to remember whether Spurs actually got Christmas Day off this year. Often the players will actually train on Christmas Day it's often in the morning and then they go home in the afternoon. I'm not sure whether they did this year because the game obviously wasn't on the Boxing Day. But anyway, essentially one day. But Mourinho felt bad for him, and knowing that he was on his own, ordered this, it's like a suckling pig, I think it's called, already cooked in a big box for Reguilon to eat on Christmas Day. Didn't even have to cook it. And even he, when he was asked about it afterwards, was like, I did that because he was on his own. I was thinking of him. And then clearly you can see he wasn't on his own on Christmas Day. He was really disappointed. And I kind of felt a little bit sorry for Spurs as well. Spurs as a club have been pretty brilliant throughout the whole pandemic. They've had a tough time, as all clubs have, with the financial element of things. But actually, what they've done, they've been terrific. I mentioned the North Middlesex University Hospital. They took in the maternity services inside the stadium, gave them a place to be, take all those pregnant women away from, the COVID cases that the hospital were dealing with. They did loads of food drops and stuff, collecting food for the trainings. And they did so many good things for people in need during the times. And they just kind of, how do I put it? The players, not all of them, of course, but, some of them just haven't been exactly the poster boys for kind of showing the way to go. You just look back to the last lockdown, you had Serge Aurier 3 times videoing himself or getting involved in videos showing that he wasn't complying with lockdown rules. One of those was Sissoko. Sessegnon and Sanchez were out together at one point on a jog, side by side. Obviously, Mourinho himself went off to do that impromptu training session with Ndombele outside his house. It's yeah, they haven't been great. And, I certainly know some people within Spurs have been so frustrated with trying to educate them, explain to them why and what not to do, and them doing it. And this was the latest one, and I know there's a lot of very unhappy people within the club that this happened. And in some cases, certainly I know the club either rent or own certain buildings that will have a number of players within it. So, some people might say, oh, but you could gather because technically you're within a household, under the same roof. That wasn't the case. There's just no excuses for this one. 18 people. I can't stop repeating that. I'm sorry, but it was just so daft. It was everything that people have been told not to do this Christmas. And, hopefully, especially with the vaccine coming, it will just be the one Christmas. It's going to be a weird Christmas this year. But yeah, so that was, it was really disappointing. It was. And yeah, Mourinho really wasn't happy afterwards. Like I said, the club strongly condemned it, and Mourinho said he was disappointed, really disappointed with what had happened. But there you go. So that's enough on that. I don't want to dwell on that too much. Like I say, it'd be interesting to see how quickly people are integrated back into the squad among those three. And like I say, a little bit more to come on certainly one of those players. Let's talk about some good stuff. Kane and Son. Kane and Son, they are always delivering good stuff, aren't they? Kane's had a busy week in a different way. He's obviously became a dad in the week to, I don't know if it's Louis or Lewis, his third child, his first boy. So, Kane's a bit weird. I always remember Kieran Trippier when he became a dad, had a bit of a nightmare. It was in terms of his football. For the first month or so, he was wiped out, absolutely knackered. With Kane, obviously, maybe being his third child, he's kind of got it down to a fine art now, but he always seems to score lots of goals after he's just become a dad. And he was excellent again yesterday. Him and Son were both superb. Let me just go through the stats. I love a good stats, especially when it comes to Kane and Son. So Kane scored from the spot and provided that delicious curling ball into Son's path to score his goal. So that's 17 goals and 14 assists now in 24 games. So 31 direct goal involvements Kane's had in 24 matches, which is ridiculous. He's actually now, with the goal and assist yesterday, the first player, I think it is, across Europe's top 5 leagues to reach double figures this season in both goals and assists. I think it's 10 goals and 11 assists in the Premier League. So phenomenal. He also, by scoring against Leeds, continued this amazing record he's got of scoring against every single Premier League opponent he's ever played in terms of that club. And it's now 30 different clubs in the Premier League he's scored against. 100% record, which is better than anyone else out there. He's just a phenomenal player. And let's not overlook Son as well. Son scored with that lovely instinctive finish yesterday, his 100th goal for Tottenham Hotspur. He's the 18th player to do so, and I understand, I think I looked at the list yesterday, he's the first non-British or Irish player to do so. So that's quite a feat, to become the first, I suppose you could call it, foreign player to come to Tottenham and score 100 goals. He's done so in 253 appearances, and this season alone, 15 goals and 8 assists in 24 games. He's been superb. They as a duo, they're just incredible. Mourinho's quite good at... He doesn't... we know what Mourinho's like. He likes to take a little bit of credit. He's not so much in this. He keeps just harking back to the fact that these guys have been playing together for years. Son himself has kind of called it almost like a telepathic link-up. And you saw that with the second goal. It was just like... Kane instinctively knows where Son's going to run. And Son is just the moment he decides to make that run. It's just the perfect moment. It's a lovely, lovely goal, that second goal. Again, we'll go into a little bit deeper, the goals, in a bit with certain players that I felt in the build-up did important things as well. But what a partnership. That was the 13th time they've combined now for a goal in the Premier League this season. 14th in all competitions. But by doing so, by hitting that 13 mark, they've now equalled Alan Shearer and Chris Sutton's 13 goals combined goals in the 1994-95 Premier League season. Kane and Son have done it in 16 games. Shearer and Sutton did it over an entire title-winning season. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible. And now, in terms of totals, I think they're on 33 goals that they've combined together for, which just takes them 3 off Drogba and Lampard's all-time record. They're going to do it, and they're going to smash it. Absolutely, they could really set some records that maybe won't be beaten for a long, 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 long time. Phenomenal couple of players, and Kane's 9 assists in the Premier League this season for Son have actually, I think they've put him joint. I feel like he now holds the joint record for assists for another player in a single season in the Premier League. The records are just tumbling all over the place. Just incredible, 2 world-class players. They really, really are. They're phenomenal, and Spurs are very fortunate to have them, as any club would be. Absolute world class. Hopefully, Son's contract will get tied up soon. Spurs still working on that to get it done. But as I've said a million times, very happy player at the club. Club very happy with him. He's so comfortable and enjoying his football, and he's always got a smile on his face, even at the worst of times. Son, so you can only imagine what he's like now. Just an absolute bundle of joy and energy. So that will happen. Spurs would have liked it to have been done by now, but like I said before, with new representation this year, it was always going to slightly slow that down, and also it's Son's probably last massive contract. And, there's a lot of clubs in the world that will no doubt want him. But like I say, he wants to stay at Spurs and Spurs want him to stay. It's just a case of making it the right deal for all parties. So that was superb. I want to talk about Tanguy Ndombele as well. Tanguy Ndombele, I thought, was really good again yesterday. I'm a bit of a Ndombele fanboy. I can't hide it. I sit in the press box alongside some of my journalist colleagues, and he just does stuff, and we all just like, oh, you just have those moments where he does a little turn. He'll fall on the floor almost, and he'll just somehow be on the floor but spin with the ball and get away from people. And it's what football's all about. There's little moments of individual magic and brilliance, and Mourinho's doing quite a good job of harnessing his instinctive, natural, raw talent, but into a more hard-working player, team player as well. He pressed a lot. In this advanced role that he's got in playing him at the moment, he really is getting far more higher up the pitch and involved in the action. He scored against Wolves last week. Yesterday, it was his shot from the edge of the box, which was kind of fumbled out of play, and from that corner, Alderweireld scored. He is directly influencing things higher up the pitch now. And I think he can play both roles. I think he can be the guy in the middle of the pitch, or I think he can be the guy just kind of on the edge of the box as well. But obviously, he had a bit of an angry moment, and it was an angry moment that I think Mourinho will have loved. And personally, I'm really not a massive. I am quite a fan, not a fan of, but I really don't mind it at all either. So he was taken off. It got a little bit longer than normal this time. I think maybe he thought he'd escaped because Sissoko came on but replaced Winks. And in kind of, I don't know if in Ndombele's head he thought, oh, I've escaped it. I've escaped my normal 60th, 70th minute substitution. He hadn't, because Lucas came on, I think it was about the 72-minute mark. And when Ndombele came off, there was lots of hand gesturing, lots of slightly annoyed reaction, and he went off down the tunnel. So, first off with the tunnel thing, don't worry about the tunnel thing. I think maybe some people that maybe hadn't heard previous Mourinho comments might think, oh, he stormed off down the tunnel. It's not how it works at Tottenham. Mourinho, if you've missed this before, has given permission to any players who have just been substituted or substitutes on the bench that then know they're not coming on because all 3 subs have been made. They're all allowed in cold conditions to go off down the tunnel and warm up. He actually said he prefers it if they do. So there was no act of mutiny, no aggression in anyone that happens to go down the tunnel at that stage in the match. But I think the fact that he showed a little bit of kind of anger off as he was coming off is a really good thing. And I think Mourinho said it the right way. Mourinho's big problem with Ndombele last season was that he didn't see a motivation. He said he saw a real lack of motivation and ambition in the way he carried himself. And, he's a very laid-back character, he can be. and he can look like he's very nonchalant in the way he approaches things. And I think to see that he was really annoyed as he came off was a really good thing, because it showed he cared. It showed he wanted to play the full 90 minutes, even though Spurs were 3-0 up at that time. Ndombele hasn't played a full Premier League match since Norwich away. I think it was December 29th, 2019. That's more than a year since he last played a full 90-minute plus whatever Premier League match. So that will be frustrating. And Ndombele may well say to Mourinho, how do you expect me to get 90 minutes fitness in my legs if I never play 90 minutes? He was tiring. There's no getting away from it. He was tiring a bit, but I think he's been working really hard. And I think the role, like I say, involves a lot of pressing. There was one incredibly painful moment in the first half when he flung himself in the way to block a clearance. And let's just put it this way, gentlemen out there, we never would have wanted to put that part of the body, meaning to put that part of the body in the way of a flying football. He was in a lot of pain. The ball thudded between his legs. And it took a good few minutes to kind of shake it off and be able to kind of even walk properly again. He's put his body and certain parts of his anatomy on the line for the club. And I thought he was really, really good again in the way he holds the ball up. I think especially with Lo Celso being out injured, I think Ndombele has become such a vital cog in the Tottenham machine. There's no one to replace him. And I do think that in Mourinho's mind, he's probably thinking, I'm going to wrap you up in cotton wool a bit now, because I want you to play against Brentford in a cup semi-final within 3 days' time or so. And we all know when a body's tired, that's when you're more likely to pick up little injuries. And Ndombele has a history of little niggling injuries, little pulled kind of muscles and issues. And a tired body does produce more of those. So I think in Mourinho's head, he's thinking, job done, let's get you off. Ndombele, really, I was quite pleased with, really wanted to stay on. And it's like when Dele Alli did it. I had no real issues. As long as the player isn't being disrespectful to the person replacing him, and it clearly is a show of, I want to keep playing for this team, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with Dele. Had a little bit of a strop when he came off. I forgot what game it was now. When he came off in the game where Mourinho criticised him after. Stoke. It was a Stoke match, wasn't it? I've got no real issues with that. I like to see desire, and I think Mourinho's a little bit the same. He likes to see players fight for their place. That's what it's all about. So, yeah, I was really pleased with Ndombele again yesterday. I think he's in a nice run of matches this season where, apart from the odd second half where, yes, he's slightly tiring, I think in terms of his contribution to the team is very, very high, and especially at a team that maybe can struggle at times to get the transitions going and getting to attacking phases of play. He's so vital. Really happy with him. And I think the rest of the midfield played really well as well. I think Harry Winks, has been a little bit of a scapegoat at times. I thought he and Ben Davies, who have both been scapegoats recently, I thought both played very well yesterday. I thought Davies was really solid and got up the pitch a few times. Winks, what was quite interesting was that to combat the Leeds style of play, Mourinho very much looked for everyone kind of midfield onwards to press. And you probably will see, if you watch the game or if you've watched any of the, match of the day, anything like that afterwards, even Højbjerg and Winks were very high up the pitch pressing. They'd take it in turns. And Winks, I thought, dealt with that really well. He was high up the pitch for... he got the ball for the penalty incident. He got the ball back and played it through to Bergwijn, who was obviously tripped in the box. And there were a few little moments where he was threading balls through. And, I wouldn't say he was fantastic against Wolves, but he was okay. But he played very well against Stoke. So that's 3 consecutive starts for Winks. And I think 2 out of the 3 he's done pretty well. What I would say is Højbjerg was just phenomenal. Højbjerg is swiftly becoming one of my most... enjoyable to watch players at Tottenham for a variety of reasons. He's an absolute bundle of energy in every sense. He is a little bit of a git. You really wouldn't want to play against him. He will take tactical fouls. He will dish out tactical fouls. He will go down at a butterfly landing on his shoulder. He's a character, and he's also a real leader out there. And again, I thought he just showed so many facets to his game yesterday. He won the ball back for the Son goal. Yeah, he won the ball back for that, didn't he? And then played it through, and then Kane obviously played it into Son. There was 1 minute he was doing like a Cruyff turn on the edge of the Leeds box and playing the ball into it. He had a shot at goal. He was absolutely everywhere, doing sliding tackles in his own box. He just was one end of the pitch to the other. He's such a phenomenal box-to-box energizer bunny of a footballer. He's superb. He's incredibly all-round player. So you can see he's a player who used to be an attacking midfielder and has come back into a different role because there's a bit of everything in his play. And I think, we say about Ndombele, keeping him in Cottenham, you really have to for Højbjerg. Like I say, I think Skip next year, I think, will be groomed to become either his eventual replacement or potentially someone to play alongside him. But for this season, I don't think Spurs have got anyone else quite like him. He's a terrific player. He's still young. Was he 24, 25? I'm trying to remember how old he is. I think it's maybe 25. He's really not old at all. So Spurs, if they treat him right and he keeps away from injuries and all of that, they could have a midfield general there for years to come. Thought he was excellent. Another player who I thought was excellent, despite one moment, was Steven Bergwijn. I had a good chat. I asked a question that got a long answer from Mourinho after the game about Bergwijn because I find him fascinating. I think, and this is going to sound really ridiculous when I kind of properly explain it, but I think Bergwijn, Spurs look less of a goal threat when he doesn't play. And the reason I say that sounds ridiculous is because Bergwijn hasn't scored a single goal this season. So you're quite right to snigger and laugh or whatever you want to do at that statement, but I'll explain it. I feel that Bergwijn playing actually gets the best out of Son and Kane. So I do think that the selfless runs he makes, his movement, his work rate, his tracking down, his hunting down of other players, his pressing, his tracking back, everything he does all of the dirty work. And essentially, with a lot of the runs and movement, he creates space for Son and Kane to do what they do best in. And I don't think it's any coincidence that he started 6 of the last 8 Premier League games. And the 2 games that he didn't start, Leicester and Wolves, Spurs looked their most blunt. I think, some fans got on his back rather ridiculously after the Liverpool match. Yes, he missed a couple of chances. One was saved. One hit the post. And yes, that will have weighed on his mind. Of course it was. And he got some ridiculously, quite disgusting abuse in some aspects. And again, yesterday, he had a big chance. Although, interestingly, I watched Match of the Day finally this morning. Anyone who only would have watched Match of the Day wouldn't have seen that they didn't show the miss. Because I think that's because it probably would have been ruled out. So what happened? Ben Davies on a run up the left-hand side of the pitch. Ball kind of knocked against his arm and he kept going and he put the ball in for Bergwijn, who turned really nicely in the box but then swiveled and blasted the ball over the bar from about 8 yards. So it probably wouldn't have stood anyway, but that doesn't get away from the fact that yes, he should have put the ball on target. He should have finished it. But I think Bergwijn has such a big role within the team now. I don't think it's any coincidence that, Bale before injury, hasn't been able to get into the first team. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Lucas Moura has dropped down the pecking order. Because I think Bergwijn, people forget, he only turned 23 a couple of months ago. I think end of October, right at the end of October or something. He's a very young player who's stepping up to a massive jump in quality of Football League. Apologies to the Eredivisie. I do like it, the Dutch league, but we're not talking about at the same level as the Premier League. The physicality, the things that are involved. And he's stepped up to it, new culture, new lifestyle. And I think he started off with that incredible goal against Man City on his debut and maybe raised enormous expectations for himself. But the club were always very excited about him. They knew what he could do. They knew every little aspect of his game that he had and could improve on. And I think he's been really, really good this season. You will get people, and I understand it, who will say, look, he's an attacking player. He has not scored a goal this season. Yeah, That's quite right. That's quite right. There's absolutely no getting away from that. And that is something that Mourinho said, yes, that's the last bit of his jigsaw he has to improve on. And Bergwijn, no doubt, last night was probably lying awake thinking of the chances he missed. There was one late on where I do wonder whether after the initial missed opportunity, he was thinking in his head, as a lot of players with low confidence in front of goal do, just get it on target. And he ran through another lovely run, got through. And actually, the Leeds keeper made a really good save with kind of like his wrist from distance, but that's distance. Sorry, point blank range. But I do wonder whether it was a case more there of Bergwijn just trying to get the ball on target rather than actually picking out a corner. But that will come. Like I say, I asked Mourinho about him afterwards, and he revealed a really interesting thing that I didn't actually know. I don't think many people knew, was that he said, he's bringing very good things to the team and he's really, really happy with him. He said the goal aspect is just the next little bit, and he said, I believe those goals will come because we saw the goal he scored against Man City and we know that's in his game. He scored a couple last season. He actually scored quite a few for PSV. But what he revealed, which I wasn't aware of, he said he's having a lot of physical problems. He said, and it's stopping him from training at full intensity quite a lot. And he said, you might have noticed, you might not have, in the last 10 minutes of the game, he was constantly holding his groin, his adductor muscle, because it's... And I go back to whether it's that step-up intensity and physicality of the league, and whether his body is just absolutely now, trying to get a hold of it and just trying to adjust to what is such a very different game of football. He's a little stocky guy, and he holds his own quite a lot, but he very much, his body, I think, is playing catch up. But like I say, the work he does for the penalty, if you look back a little bit earlier in the phases, it's Bergwijn pressing up the top. He kind of gets a foot onto one pass, which panics the Leeds defence. He's got three players around him, and they eventually kind of pass it back. I think the keeper boots it out. It goes to Winks, who plays it to Bergwijn, who gets tripped in the box for the penalty. So I think he's doing really good things, Bergwijn. I hope people don't get on his back about the missed chances, because I think the goals will come. Like Mourinho says, they will come. I think he's doing everything else right now, and that's, someone like Jose Mourinho doesn't start a player 6 out of 8 Premier League games because, out of any sentiment or anything like that. They get picked because they're doing a job for the team, and I think he's been really excellent. And I do hope those who just see snippets of a performance or don't watch the entire thing don't get on his back, because we've seen what that did after the Liverpool game, and it doesn't benefit anyone. Fair play to him, if anything, for coming back and looking so good on his first start. I was really pleased with Bergwijn as well. What else did I want to talk about today? All of his runs, only 23. Of course, we covered all of that. Sorry, I've got so many little notes today because I knew there were so many things I wanted to cover. Matt Doherty red card. It was a weird one. Doherty had a funny game. Him and Dyer just had a little bit of a problem in their possession. I felt some of their passing was really slack, especially first half more than the second. I don't think Lucas Moura helped Matt Doherty whatsoever with the second yellow card. It was Lucas Moura is kind of going through this little rut at the moment where, he's... I think the thing with Lucas before was I maybe wasn't such a big fan of him starting games, but I could see when he came off the bench against tired legs what he could do. I felt he was a really good impact sub. And I kind of feel that he hasn't been making the most of his opportunities when coming off the bench. I feel like the last few games when he's come off the bench, he's actually, without sounding too brutal, he's actually made the team worse in terms of he's not holding the ball. He's trying, Dele Alli got told off for a flick against, Stoke the other day that didn't come off and obviously led eventually to a goal. Lucas's flick yesterday, a completely awful flick, actually kind of contributed to Doherty getting sent off, because he then daftly, on his own point, went into a challenge he didn't need to or shouldn't have had to go in for and got himself sent off. It was quite a weird moment after where he was sat. He wouldn't go down the tunnel. I think it was because it was in added time and he didn't, I don't know, he's just maybe annoyed, and he just kind of said something to Mourinho, who just glared at him as if to say, like, what have you just done, kind of thing. I think, pretty sure the rules state that he will now miss the Brentford match, Whereas an accumulation of cards, like 5, 10 cards, means you miss a game or two in the same competition. I'm pretty sure when it's a red card, you miss just the next domestic match. So that's no Doherty to face Brentford this week. Obviously, we don't know about Sergio Aurier. Sergio Aurier wasn't involved in the squad at all. Mourinho didn't speak about him afterwards. He wasn't asked about him, to be fair. It's a funny one with players right now. It's so you get some players who aren't involved in squads at all, like Davinson Sanchez, and you don't know whether it's just because there's so many options, and then you don't know whether it's something else. We don't know. So we'll find out soon enough whether Aurier will be involved on Tuesday, and if he's not, then I know he has had a couple of injury issues recently. Aurier. There was one in the warm up, wasn't there? What was the match? There was a game in the warm up where he played. He still played, and he actually played really well, and I cannot remember which match it was. But he was very good. And then he had a bit of a stinker against Leicester, didn't he? But yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. Yes, so ironically as well about that red card was Spurs hadn't suffered a single Premier League red card in the entirety of 2020 and managed to get one in the first game of 2021. It's weird the way it works, isn't it? But yeah, it wasn't the greatest game for Doherty yesterday. Didn't really shine. Got caught out of position a few times, and his passing wasn't great. I can do better for him. I've stuck up for him on a lot of things because I do see potential there. Like I say, he's essentially retraining to be a right back, but wasn't great yesterday. Wasn't one of his best. Same with Dyer. Dyer had some good moments, some really important interceptions in the second half. But had a few. He keeps kind of trying these Alderweireld style long balls, and don't get me wrong, Alderweireld's missing more than he's getting on target as well. But Dyer just seems to be even worse at them, and he's just giving the ball away, bypassing the midfield and the strikers, and just giving the ball back. It's really not the way Spurs should be playing. But whether they've been asked to do it, I don't know. That was what I was going to say as well. Quite an interesting little stat. Toby Alderweireld's goal was the 600th Premier League goal scored under Jose Mourinho. He's had 347 Premier League matches and won 211 of them. And yeah, that Alderweireld goal was his 600th, which I thought was quite interesting. Especially when you look at the amount of goals. For someone that's known as a defensive manager, that's... not quite, but getting towards a 2 goals every game kind of guy. We're not scoring out a 1-0 kind of merchant. So I thought that was quite interesting. So looking ahead to this week, kind of touched on it slightly. It's very much a cup week. Spurs have got a massive match on Tuesday night. Yes, they avoided Man United and Man City for the other semi-final of the Carabao Cup, but anyone going into this game thinking that Tottenham drew Brentford at home. Hello, we're in the final. Whoa, readjust your thinking, honestly. Brentford have been excellent this season in Championship. They were technically, before their game at the weekend was called off, they were second in the Championship. They've only lost 3 games, scored 36 goals in 22 matches. The game at the weekend was called off because it was against Bristol City. Bristol City had a spark in COVID cases, so the game was called off. So a little bit like Spurs with the Fulham match, Brentford will come into this semi-final fully kind of refreshed and ready to play their football. They're a really good attacking team under Thomas Frank. They know where the net is. They really do. And they've knocked out 4 Premier League teams already in this competition. Southampton, West Brom, Fulham, Newcastle. The Southampton and West Brom games are away from home as well, so they know how to go to a Premier League stadium and win. Anyone thinking that this is very much one that Spurs just have to turn up for, you're going to be so wrong. Spurs have to go, I think, if you look at the 2 games, the cup games, I think Mourinho has to go full strength for Tuesday night. It's a semi-final. Spurs cannot take semi-finals, with a pinch of salt. They don't come around too often. And when they do, Tottenham lose them most of the time. I'm trying to think the last final was it the one against Mourinho's Chelsea under Poch? Maybe his first or second season. It's a long time. Obviously Champions League final. But in terms of domestic cup finals, Yeah, it's something that Spurs can't sniff at whatsoever. I think he has to go strong, and then Marine, I think he can change things up, and I'll explain that a little bit because I don't want to be disrespectful, Marine, but there is a reason. But yeah, Brentford really massive test. Obviously not a City or United level test, but it's one of those classic ones. If you are complacent in any way, it's going to be another upset, and Brentford will be in the final. They're a very good team, and they had a very good season last year as well. They were very unfortunate, and I think you're kind of seeing now the fight back, almost like the kickback after not getting promoted. Sorry, I've got all snotty suddenly. Not getting promoted last season. So yeah, please don't kind of rock up to watch your tellies and watch that game expecting a massive win. It could be if Tottenham absolutely turn up and do the job that they need to do, but if they don't, they're going to find out. I don't think it will be a massive win either way. I think it will still be a tight game, to be honest. A really informed team they're taking on. I wanted to briefly touch on, obviously, Mauricio Pochettino is back in work, which is great for him. Only a very, I've said previously about PSG, and I do feel that while a former club of his, it wasn't the league he was looking to be, and we know that. He was looking to be a Premier League manager again, or at least in La Liga, but jobs haven't been coming up, and I think we're getting to the stage now where he's been out of the game for probably, you're starting to get into that period where you've been out of the game for so long, we kind of almost get forgotten about when big jobs come up. And yeah, I think it's quite clever in a weird way of hopefully gets the monkey off his back in terms of get some silverware, albeit in a league where it's a bit easier for PSG to win silverware. And I think, I can't remember if I read this or not, that I think within like a fortnight or so, he's got a cup final to play against Andre Villas-Boas's Marseille. So the battle of the two former Tottenham managers, and Poch could have his first managerial trophy within a fortnight. He always claims the Catalonia Cup was one he had with Espanyol when they beat Barcelona, but technically a major trophy. Sorry, Poch. But it's interesting. I do think as well. He's only signed an 18-month deal. There's an option for another year, but it's a short-term deal. It's very much this is good for both parties kind of deal, but there's not a lot of long-term planning thought in there. We know with Poch and young players and looking to progress a project, this is very much, this suits us both very nicely. Let me come in, win some trophies, bolster my CV, and hopefully do a job for you guys in the process. And you do wonder if a job elsewhere comes up, and he'll get very well paid as well. But if a job comes up somewhere else, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. But good to see him back in management, and Jesus Perez by his side, Tony Jimenez, Miguel D'Agostino, and his son Sebastiano Pochettino as well, heading there on the sports science side of things. So, wish the best of luck, obviously, to him. Not if they're playing Tottenham, of course. It only goes so far. We all want to see Tottenham do well, but he's a good guy, and as I said before, we want good things should happen to good people, and Poch is a good guy, and so is his team as well. And then, as I said earlier, Marine at the weekend, just to complete the week. It's such a lovely game for the FA Cup. It really is. It's a difficult one to explain to people maybe outside the country just how much I don't know if this is true or not. I'm going to say it anyway, but I think it could be the biggest gap between teams to have ever faced each other in the FA Cup, or certainly for a long team. A team, who, well, it depends, I think, on the Chelsea result today, could be third in the Premier League, facing a team that, a tier, I can't remember, it's 8 or 9 in British football. For local people, for anyone that lives in the Tottenham, Hertfordshire, Essex area, Marine are the northern equivalent, and they play at the same level as Hertford Town, Ware, Waltham Abbey, I think Harlow as well, Brentwood, Canvey Island, teams like that. Tottenham Hotspur rocking up at their joint is huge. It's historic. And I've been trying to help them out as much as I can on Twitter and stuff, because I really feel sorry for them. They were meant to have, in the previous tiers, they were meant to have 2,000 fans come into the game, which would have been brilliant. Gate receipts and everything that come from that. But unfortunately, switching to tier 4 means it's going to be an empty stadium, other than media and staff and people like that. So yeah, the club have very much been on social media trying to push selling match programmes, half and half scarves, a virtual ticket that puts you in a raffle that actually means that you can manage the team in a friendly. So I've been trying to help them push that as well with any Spurs fans, and I think, from what I understand, the take up from Spurs fans are always brilliant. With stuff like this, especially the football family comes together, and it's just amazing for a little club who, in a year when so many clubs are going to the wall with the financial stuff, they really are struggling. Marine are going to have BBC television money. They'll have all the prize money they've had up to this point from the FA for the FA Cup. And obviously, like I say, any of these merchandising stuff they can get done as well. It's brilliant. I love it. I love all that side of the game. My background, if anyone knows where I've come from, I used to cover a lot of non-league football for years. And I've covered many of those clubs. I kind of compared them to down south. There were clubs that I've covered, most of them, at some point or another. And I just know what it would mean for any of those clubs if they had Tottenham coming to town in an FA Cup match. It's huge. But what I would say, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is that the whole aspect of, especially with no fans, I think that's a bit of a game changer as well. There's no atmosphere whatsoever. And how do I put this? A team at that level, I think certainly those players at the Southern version that I covered would have all been part-time players who would have had a normal full-time job during the day, who would have trained a couple of times a week and played their games. So if you're telling me that if they turned up with a professional attitude, that the likes of Carlos Vinicius, Lucas Moura, Dele Alli, Joe Rodon, Davinson Sanchez, Joe Hart, Matt Doherty should be available again. Players like that, potentially Jedson Fernandez as well. Players like that can't turn up and take on a team, and I hate to use this as a disparaging term, but it's not meant to be, part-timers. Guys that can be very talented players and can have terrific fitness levels, but ultimately do not train every single day in their as their profession to play football. If those Spurs players who do that can't then turn up and do a job, then they don't deserve to go through anyway. They shouldn't progress to the fourth round of the FA Cup, and fair play to Marine. But really, they should be doing that, which means that you can put out a full-strength team against Brentford and then rotate your team for the Sunday's match, which will be great. I'm waiting to hear back actually on an accreditation for that match. I'd love to go there. Just for me, that is what the FA Cup's all about. I love those kind of games. It'd be interesting to see how it works with the whole COVID testing thing as well. I presume, I don't know, I must very much say I presume that Spurs will look to try and get testing done on Marine or pay for that. I'll have to check into that. That may not be the case. It may be that the FA do that. I'm not entirely sure how it's working for FA Cup matches, but obviously how that affects things and what results of that bring as well, whether that changes matters, we'll have to see. But on paper, wonderful FA Cup tie, and really, really, really looking forward to it. And Tottenham need to win silverware. I know we're looking ahead here, but I'm obviously taking in the Carabao Cup as well. If Spurs could do the job, they've got a great chance to win some silverware this year. Some fans will point to the fact that the year ends in one. I know some people are very superstitious about that. It doesn't work every time the year ends in one, but it has. Maybe suggest that the special one is perhaps going to have more of a bearing in whether Spurs win a trophy this year. But Spurs fans have been starved of silverware for so long. It'd be great to see some in the cabinet again, wouldn't it? And as well, but as I said, can't get too fixed up on what's ahead. First, you've got to look at what's in front of you right now. And that's very much the Tottenham mentality right now. Next game. But yeah, good way to start 2021. As I say, back to winning ways. Some little off the pitch things which weren't great. But hopefully that's will have been laid to rest now and everyone can move on. And yeah, let's see what these two cup matches bring, because hopefully good things for Tottenham and hopefully some really good matches as well. So yeah, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later.